Why are you so concerned? It's nothing major. Your sister just has a little crush on your husband. My parents said after I told them she was flirting with him until she caused consequences. Mindy is my younger sister. In our early years, I do not think she felt as much resentment towards me as she would later develop. In fact, I remember a time when I adored her so much that the idea of being estranged would have seemed impossible to me. We used to play together all the time, and I was the one who taught her how to ride a bike. However, as we grew up, it became increasingly clear how different our personalities were. Academically, I used to get good grades without too much effort, while Mindy faced more difficulties. It is not that she lacked intelligence, but for some reason studies did not come as easily to her. This became a point of tension at home, as our parents placed a lot of emphasis on grades. Seeing that Mindy was not performing as they expected, they constantly compared her to me, using my performance as an example and pushing her to try harder as if I were the standard she should meet. I could see how much this situation frustrated her, and I honestly understand why she was upset. It must have been very difficult to constantly hear that she was not up to her older sister's level. I tried to talk to her about this and even offered to help her with her homework, but with the constant criticism, she began to distance herself from me. Then, during our teenage years, the issue of how we spent our time after school came up. Being more introverted, I preferred to spend my afternoons quietly studying or reading a book in my room. I was comfortable in my own company. That is how I have always been. Mindy, on the other hand, was always much more sociable. She loved going out and spending time with friends. She thrived in social environments, and there was nothing wrong with her wanting to go to parties or school events like prom. It was just her way of being. However, since I preferred to stay home, our parents used me as an excuse to keep Mindy at home as well. They would say things like, "Your sister is at home studying, why can you not do the same?" Or, "If she is not going to parties, why should you go?" It was completely unfair to her, and I knew it. It did not bother me that she wanted to go out and have fun, but our parents insisted that I was the example she should follow. This situation only increased her anger. Little by little, she began to vent her frustration on me, calling me boring and lifeless because I did not have the social life she longed for. I could see how much she resented the restrictions our parents imposed on her, but it hurt me that she directed her anger towards me. I tried to explain to her that it was not my fault, that I was not the one keeping her at home, but since she knew she could not blame our parents, I became the target of her frustration. Over time, the tension between Mindy and me intensified. What began as small disagreements turned into increasingly frequent and intense fights. Mindy started to attack me, making comments about my appearance. She would make hurtful remarks about my hair, my weight, or anything she could think of. One of her favorite pastimes was comparing our physical appearances. She would mock me, pointing out how I supposedly looked like our father, and that made me less attractive than her. She would say things like, "Well, you inherited Dad's nose and shoulders, so it is no surprise you look so masculine for a woman." It was a painful comparison, as I had never had issues with my body image until then. No matter how many times I asked her to stop, she always found something new to criticize. One day, I made a casual comment in front of my mother and Mindy about how my old jeans no longer fit me. It was nothing important, just an observation about how my body had changed over time. My mother, being understanding, assured me it was perfectly normal for our bodies to change as women and that I should not worry. But Mindy saw this as an opportunity to attack me. With a mocking smile, she laughed and said, "Well, you're starting to look like a pig. Maybe this is a sign for you to move your fat butt and start exercising more." That comment affected me deeply. I remember feeling as if I had been punched in the stomach. My mother immediately reprimanded her for being so unpleasant, but even though my mom defended me, Mindy's words stuck in my mind. It is not that I was overweight or unhealthy, but hearing something like that from my own younger sister affected me in a way that is hard to explain. Finally, I decided that enough was enough. I set a goal to start exercising, not to prove anything to her, but for myself. I wanted to feel stronger and healthier, and I thought that maybe exercise would also help clear my mind. So I started doing light exercises with weights at home and began running every morning. As I got more involved day by day, I realized how much I enjoyed it. I was no longer exercising because of what Mindy had said. I loved the sense of accomplishment that came with getting stronger and improving my endurance. It became something I looked forward to, a positive outlet for all the negative emotions I had been carrying. Looking back, I am glad I made that decision because one morning during one of my regular runs, I met my boyfriend, who is now my husband. From the beginning, Richard and I connected over our shared love for staying active, and what started as casual conversations during our runs transformed into something much deeper. I liked running with him every day, and I felt much more confident. Meeting him was one of the best things that happened to me, and it would not have happened if I had not decided to start taking better care of myself. When Richard and I started dating and things began to get more serious between us, my parents were thrilled to see me so happy, and they really liked him. They could see he was a good guy and that I was falling deeply in love with him. I admit that before meeting Richard, the first had only dated one guy, so I did not have much experience. However, my relationship with Richard felt really natural and uncomplicated. But as expected, Mindy found a way to create problems. She would see me come home excited and happy after spending time with Richard, and instead of being happy for me, she would say things like, "You should not get so happy, he is probably just using you," or, "You do not have as much dating experience as I do, so do not get ahead of yourself. You are getting too serious and needy." It was as if she could not stand to see me happy, especially with someone like Richard. I could tell she wanted to make me feel insecure about my relationship, as if I did not deserve someone like him. But the reality was that Richard was nothing like what she implied. From the beginning, he was sincerely in love with me. He always kept his word. He treated me with respect and made it clear that he saw a future with me. I felt safe and loved with him, and I never doubted his intentions. So I paid no attention to Mindy's words. After months of dating, Richard came to my parents' house to officially meet the whole family. It was a big step. I was a little nervous, but mostly excited. My parents were very welcoming as I expected, and they seemed to take an immediate liking to him. They saw how much he cared about me, and that was all they needed to give him their approval. It was a great evening overall, except for Mindy. I expected her to maybe make some snide remarks about me in front of him, as she used to do, but instead, she was strangely very flirty with Richard. She made comments about how good he looked or laughed too hard at his jokes. At one point, she even touched his arm during their conversation, which made Richard incredibly uncomfortable. He even moved his chair a little away from her. I looked at my parents to see if they had noticed Mindy's behavior, but they seemed oblivious. To be honest, I had always known that Mindy behaved a certain way around guys. She had this habit of batting her eyelashes, using a softer, more feminine voice, and generally acting to get their attention. I was not surprised when she did it with guys in the past, but this time it was different. This was Richard, my boyfriend, and I did not expect her to cross that line. I could not shake the unease I felt about how she had behaved that night, so after Richard left, I decided to mention it to my parents. I explained how Mindy had been behaving strangely around Richard all night, but to my surprise, they completely dismissed it. My mother even joked, almost laughing at the situation, and said something like, "Come on, it is cute that your little sister has a little harmless crush on Richard. That probably just means she trusts him too." I was surprised by her reaction, especially my mother's. It was as if she saw nothing wrong with Mindy's behavior. To her it was nothing, but to me it was much more than that. It was a violation of boundaries, and it made me uncomfortable to see my younger sister shamelessly trying to flirt with my boyfriend. Since my parents were not going to address the issue, I decided to confront Mindy myself. However, when I asked her why she was touching my boyfriend's arms, she acted all innocent and naive, as if she had not realized what she was doing. She told me she did not mean anything by it, that she just found Richard really, really cute. She told me he looked too good for me. I shook my head and told her that her actions were not only uncomfortable for me, but they were creepy, and even Richard had noticed how weird she was around him. I told her she had no right to behave like a stalker with him. Upon hearing this, her face turned bright red, and I could tell my words had struck a nerve. Instead of apologizing or trying to explain further, she looked furious and ran to her room, slamming the door. It was clear I had embarrassed her, but I did not regret confronting her. I was not going to let her undermine my relationship with Richard or make me feel insecure. After this incident, I became more cautious with my sister and stopped bringing Richard home. He also confessed that he did not feel very comfortable around Mindy. Later, when it was time to go to college, he and I had been accepted to universities that were almost an hour apart from each other. It was a bit sad to be in a long-distance relationship, however, he assured me that we would make it work, and I believed him. Mindy commented to me before I left for college that I should not have expectations with Richard, and that men love to cheat once they are in college. Still, despite her comments, Richard and I made our long-distance relationship work. We talked every day. We made plans to see each other when we could, and we stayed close even though we were miles apart. One day, Richard mentioned to me on one of our calls that Mindy had sent him a friend request on Facebook. He accepted the request without thinking much about it since she was my sister, so it was not completely unexpected. But immediately after, Mindy started sending him flirty messages. Richard told me about it right away because he found it strange, especially considering that Mindy had not been in contact with me since I left for college. She had not even called or messaged me once. If my mother ever tried to get me to talk to her, Mindy would start yelling at her that she did not want to talk. Now suddenly she was messaging my boyfriend. It made no sense. A few days after our conversation, Richard came to visit me at college, as he usually did, and that is when he showed me all the messages she had been sending him. I reviewed them and saw that there was not a single reply from him, but she kept messaging him every day. She would send him messages like "Good morning, handsome," or "Good night, thinking of you," with a heart emoji even though there was no response from him. In addition to that, I noticed she had started commenting on some of his posts, sometimes calling him handsome or leaving a rose emoji. It was becoming too much, and both Richard and I agreed that something had to be done. So with Richard by my side, I decided to call Mindy and confront her head-on. I asked her why she had been messaging Richard behind my back. At first, she tried to downplay it, saying she just wanted to see how he was doing, but that excuse did not work with me. I told her directly that she had no right to message my boyfriend like that, and that if she really wanted to know about him, she could have done it through me. There was no reason for her to act behind my back this way. I told her she was acting like a stalker by sending him multiple messages, even though he was clearly ignoring her. I made it clear to her that Richard was going to remove her from his account, and that if she ever bothered him again, I would not hesitate to send all the messages and comments to our parents and cousins. I wanted her to understand how out of line she was being, and if she wanted to continue acting like a weirdo sending messages to her older sister's boyfriend, then she could explain herself to the whole family. At that moment, she began to defend her actions, giving me excuses that it was not a big deal and that Richard probably did not mind receiving her messages and that he must be lying to me when he said he felt uncomfortable. I reminded her again that this was her last warning. I did not want things to escalate more than they already had, so I told her that if she respected me even a little, she would stop immediately. Fortunately, Richard supported me through all of this, and after that conversation, he immediately removed her. He seemed almost relieved to be done with it, as he also found it very strange. It felt like a necessary step to prevent her toxic behavior from infiltrating our relationship. As you can imagine, after the whole thing with Richard, the already tense relationship between Mindy and me deteriorated even further. Although she never tried to contact Richard again, after that confrontation it was clear that she held a grudge against me. Every time I came home during college breaks, she refused to acknowledge my presence. It was as if I did not exist to her, and any trace of a sisterly relationship between us vanished completely. My parents noticed the change, but they did not really intervene. My mother, in her usual way of downplaying things even after learning about everything, would dismiss it by telling me that fights between sisters are normal and that Mindy would eventually mature and get over her harmless crush on Richard. She seemed convinced that this was just a phase and that eventually Mindy and I would reconcile. But we never did. Time passed. I graduated from college. Richard and I were still going strong, and after years of making the long-distance relationship work, we finally moved in together. Life seemed to be falling into place. We had our separate careers, but we supported each other through all the ups and downs. Then one day, Richard completely surprised me by proposing. It was one of the most emotional moments of my life. I could not believe we had been through so much together, and now we were taking this next step. Our parents were delighted, and we started planning the wedding. With my mother still clinging to the hope that we could fix our relationship, she insisted that I include Mindy in the wedding. She convinced me to ask her to be a bridesmaid, although I had serious reservations about it. But when I asked Mindy to be a bridesmaid, she flatly refused. She did not offer any explanation. In addition to this, she refused to come to my wedding as well. Our parents tried to intervene, but Mindy was firm in her decision. To be honest, I was a little relieved that she did not attend the wedding, as I did not have to worry about any unnecessary drama. So I let it go. 6 years had passed, and I had no contact with Mindy. Life went on, and she rarely crossed my mind. That was until about 7 months ago, when my husband Richard casually mentioned one afternoon that he had just discovered that his cousin Harry had posted a photo on social media with his new girlfriend. And to his surprise, that girl was none other than my sister Mindy. He showed me the photo, and I could not believe what I was seeing. The idea of Mindy dating someone from Richard's family caught me completely off guard. I did not even know they were in the same circles, let alone that they had met and were now dating. My immediate reaction was to wonder if this was some kind of intentional move on Mindy's part. After everything that had happened between us, and especially her strange fixation on Richard in the past, I could not shake the feeling that there was more to this. Feeling that I needed clarity, I decided to contact Harry directly. We had always had a good relationship, so I felt comfortable enough to ask him what was going on. When I mentioned Mindy, Harry told me that apparently they had met at a gym months ago and had hit it off immediately. He seemed genuinely in love with her. I tried to keep the conversation light, but I had to ask the obvious question. Did he know that Mindy was my sister? He admitted that he found out after a few days, although Mindy had exclusively asked him not to mention her to me at all, which is why he never contacted me or Richard. That was a big red flag for me. Why would she deliberately want to keep her relationship with Harry a secret? At that point, I felt I had no other choice but to tell Harry the truth about my estranged relationship with Mindy. I explained everything to him, the years of resentment, the way she had crossed boundaries with Richard, and why I had finally cut off all contact with her. I told him about the strange obsession she seemed to have with Richard back then, and how uncomfortable she had made both of us feel. I did not hold back because I felt that Harry deserved to know exactly why the situation was so strange to me. I hoped he would at least understand my concerns or be willing to listen with an open mind, but instead Harry became defensive. He seemed genuinely angry that I brought all this up. He argued that Mindy had been very kind to him and that I was probably making things up or exaggerating past events. He refused to believe my words, and I was left frustrated and hurt. Later, when my husband found out about my conversation with Harry, he also got upset. He told me furiously that I should not have interfered in their relationship, as this was none of our business. I tried to explain that my intentions were to protect Harry and make sure he was aware of Mindy's history and the potential problems. I genuinely wanted him to be safe and avoid getting hurt, but Richard told me firmly that I should learn to accept their true love, as Harry seemed genuinely happy with her. He also told me that maybe Mindy had changed after all these years, and we should give her the benefit of the doubt. Despite my reservations about Mindy, for Richard's sake, I agreed to take a step back. In these last few months, after the social media reveal, Harry and Mindy have been dating more openly. Our parents, although initially uncomfortable with the whole situation, have chosen to believe Harry's claim that it was just a coincidence that he met Mindy like that at his gym. Richard and I, however, have kept our distance from them and rarely go to family gatherings. This past weekend, Harry invited us to his housewarming party and insisted that we attend. Apparently, he had decided to move in with Mindy. Richard and I were hesitant at first about attending, but we did not want to cause a division in the family by declining. So we reluctantly decided to go. When we arrived at the party, things felt weird right away. Harry, clearly in love, was practically bouncing around telling everyone how he and Mindy were meant to be for each other. He seemed so cheerful, so head over heels in love, but Mindy was indifferent and almost uninterested in him. I caught her looking at Richard once or twice, but she never came over to talk to us. As the night went on, I could see that Mindy was drinking more and more compared to the rest of the guests. At one point, Richard excused himself to go to the bathroom, and that is when Mindy found her opportunity to be alone with him. Apparently, she followed him there and tried to start a conversation. According to Richard, she seemed determined to talk to him in private, but he told her firmly that anything she had to say she could say in front of me. And that is when Mindy, already quite drunk, began to confess her feelings to Richard right there in the hallway. With her voice slurred by alcohol, she told him that she had always been in love with him and that she had done everything she could to be close to him. Her voice became louder and more frantic as she accused him of choosing me when, according to her, she was the prettier one. Her loud outburst could be heard by some of the guests. I got up from my seat, but before I could even react, Harry rushed over to see what was happening. Unfortunately, he also heard Mindy's confession to Richard loud and clear. I could see the shock and pain on his face as the truth was revealed. The room felt heavy with tension, with people whispering, not knowing how to react to the drama unfolding in front of them. Richard, as always, handled it with grace. He simply told Mindy that it was inappropriate for her to say these things and that her feelings, whatever they were, did not matter because he had always been in love with me. That only seemed to enrage her more, and she began to sob shamelessly. Harry then tried to pull Mindy away from everyone to prevent her from embarrassing herself further. Eventually, Richard and I decided it was best to leave the party. The tension was too strong, and it was clear that nothing good would come from staying any longer. We later found out that after we left, Harry and Mindy had a massive fight in front of everyone. According to reports, it was a scene of total chaos. Mindy, in a drunken rage, threw plates and glasses at Harry while he tried to dodge her attacks and kept demanding to know why she was in love with Richard. I am sure it must have been a horrible experience for everyone present. Harry's parents soon contacted me after the incident. They were upset and wanted to discuss what had happened. I reiterated everything I had previously told Harry. Mindy had always had a strange obsession with my husband, even though Richard had never shown any interest in her, and she had probably even befriended Harry with that intention. I told them they needed to talk to Harry and make him see the truth. Today, I received another call from Harry's parents. It turns out that Harry, after talking things over with his parents, tried to fix things with Mindy, but as expected, she did not take his decision well. In her anger, Mindy began to trash their apartment. She threw things, scratched Harry's car, and even spread glitter everywhere as a form of revenge. Then she packed up and left, leaving behind a mess that Harry now had to deal with since only his name was on the lease. Harry's parents were understandably furious and demanded that I contact my sister immediately, as she was not answering any of their calls. They also demanded that I make Mindy pay for all the damages. I reiterated that I would try, but that I doubted she would even answer my calls. Upon hearing this, his parents began to threaten legal action, stating that if I did not make sure she covered the costs, they would sue me and her. I was surprised by their reaction. I tried to explain to them that I had no control over Mindy's actions and that I had already warned them and Harry about her behavior. Harry's mother replied that I should have done a better job of warning and that because I was her sister, I should also be responsible for the damages. Am I the bad one for not having warned Harry and his parents enough? Should I have done something more? Update 1. I am surprised how quickly my post went viral. When Richard got home from work, we talked about all of this, and he promised me that he would take care of talking to his family to resolve the situation. He asked me not to worry, reminding me that I have no legal responsibility for what my sister does. He also apologized to me for not having believed me before when I tried to warn him about the concerning signs I saw in the relationship between my sister and his cousin. To clear up the doubts of many, my husband has never had any kind of romantic relationship with my sister. They have never been alone. If something had happened between them, I am sure my sister would not have kept it a secret until now. She would have undoubtedly made it public a long time ago. About Mindy, I am not sure if she is really in love with my husband. I think her obsession has more to do with our lifelong insecurities and our rivalry as sisters. Her inappropriate behavior towards him seems more like a way to compete with me and ruin my happiness. It is sad to see how my own sister has become the one who seeks to hurt me the most. Update 2. My parents have decided to take care of all the damages that Mindy caused. Apparently, after her breakup with Harry, she went crying to my parents' house and has been staying with them these days. When I told them everything Mindy had done to Harry's apartment, they immediately contacted Harry and his parents to apologize. They were very upset with Mindy and promised to pay for all the necessary repairs. Mindy is lucky that Harry decided not to press charges against her. Harry's parents called me to apologize for how they treated me before. They acknowledged that they had reacted without thinking and that they were not serious. I have decided to accept their apology because I understand how bad they must have felt after what my sister did. Update 3. It has been a month since my last update. For those who ask what happened with Mindy and if she had to face consequences for her actions, my father has given her an ultimatum. She has 1 month to find her own place and move out of my parents' house. My sister has never held a steady job and has always depended financially on my parents or her boyfriends, so it will be interesting to see how she handles this. My mother has finally stopped justifying Mindy's behavior, and it seems she cannot take the situation anymore. My parents are really disappointed, especially after having to pay thousands of dollars to Harry for the damages she caused. As for us, Richard and I are fine. I feel very calm knowing that my sister will no longer be part of Richard's family.